Hello and welcome to another episode of Biohack Chat. I am your host, as always. Welcome to the show. Today we are once again going to be talking with my good friend Gabriel Licina, and today we're talking all things fermented. I love ferments. Gabe loves ferments. We all love ferments. Ferments are the thing that make food worth eating. And if you didn't know this, you're going to learn a bunch of interesting things today. So, without further ado, allow me to introduce my good friend. Okay. Oh wait, I gotta. I'm
A game.
a
Click,
game.
click, click,
Click.
It's just
Okay,
a
here we
game.
go. There we
It's
go.
just a game.
All right, you're on. Say hi.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me back. My name is Gabriel Escena. I work for a 501c3 nonprofit called Sci House, and I like food.
This is one of the ways that me and Gabriel have always gotten along. We love food. Gabe was a professional chef for many years. I learned many a thing about food from Gabe. Um, and one of the other things that I learned from Gabe was a appreciation for all things fermented. Um, so I have some things that I'm gonna show off as the show goes on. We're gonna be talking about some of our favorite ferments. Now we're mostly looking at your tits, Gabe. If you could put the camera a wee bit higher. There we go. Much better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just that, I know that I'm
We're
gonna
talking about
slouch.
ferments, not milk. Jesus.
I mean, we could talk about milk. We could talk about, hey, let's get this started
Oh
straight
God,
away.
your weird cheese. Oh no,
So-
what have I done?
So I just learned about a new ferment, which is called, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm really sorry if I butcher
what's
this,
it?
but it's called a rule. It's
Oh.
like 2 A's, an R, a U, and an L.
Okay, wait. Oh, Jesus, I'm gonna look this up on my phone so I know what to look up when I go over to Google. So you talk about your weird cheese and I'll find some pictures. Give me a second.
It's not cheese.
I don't want to.
And it, so how this works is so this is like one of the staples of the Mongolian diet. I just learned about this a couple of days ago. I'm so stoked. This is what kimchi is to the Koreans. It's this milk that's been dried into a unchewable block. That is not a rule. And
Is the right thing? No, that is not the right thing.
maybe
Cheese. No, this
nope. No N. No N.
is no N.
And
Did,
whoa there.
did I find? I know. Just Google is weird, man. Okay, I'm gonna just go to the wiki article because
Yeah.
Mongolian
Here we go.
cuisine.
Yep. Mongolian fact. Just do that one. So so basically what you do is you're a nomadic tribe, so you don't have refrigerators. You don't have a place to really store things other than saddlebags or in boxes and stuff. And so you take
I found it.
now you're going to be making your horse milk and your camel milk into kumis, which is like the fermented mare's milk of horses, because that's a thing. But then you're also
Because nothing
like,
sounds nothing says "fuck me up, fam" like fermented horse milk.
hey, I'm super down. It's one of the only things I
Every
haven't
person
had.
I know who
If
would
somebody
be.
out, like, I'm going strong today. If somebody out there has some kumis, hook me up. I am ready. Um, so, one of the things that you do is you also have like goats or sheep. Like sheep are great. They're like bioreactors, except you feed them grass and it turns into meat, milk, and fibers, right?
Yeah, sheep
And
are
so
definitely one of those things that like I would like to own a sheep. just one.
we're definitely looking at goats.
Really?
Live in America, thinking about goats.
Yeah, when
Um,
when I retire to the like, Quebec mountains. I'm gonna get me some goats and some ducks. It's gonna be wonderful.
So it's not like tofu. It's the tofu version of milk, which is definitely not like cheese. So basically, you take the milk and you let it sit in the sun until it turns into like kind of a sour yogurty thing. You strain off the liquid, you pack it into bricks, and then you, like, for some reason this is very important, you let it sit and dry in the sun and the wind. Because, like, you're in the Mongolian steppes. This is not agricultural land. This is like it's a great place to be a nomad. And so you need to be able to store this because, like, you have to milk your animals every day, but you can't just, like, ambitiously chug, I don't know, gallons and gallons of milk every day. This is a very bad idea. So you store it, and evidently you turn it into bricks. And these bricks are so hard that you can't chew them. They are conventionally consumed by putting them in your mouth and then sucking on them, just like some sort of like evil fermented gobstopper. And so
we just had our first donation, appropriately from Jesus.
Oh,
so thank you,
hi,
Jesus.
Jesus, thanks.
Oh, speaking of just before you get back into it, just speaking of donations, as you've probably noticed, there's a donation bar. I suppose it would be on where the fuck it would be on this side. We're doing some fundraising to build me a new editing computer, because oh god, do I desperately need one. I've actually ordered all of the parts, so at this point we're basically just paying it off. But yeah, so any donations made through the Streamlab links in the description will go towards filling this bar up. Any donations through Super Chat or stickers or any of that kind of thing will mostly go to food and rent and probably making more pickles. Anyways, with that
Yeah,
let's get back into weird.
It is like a
cheese
dried
gobstopper
block of milk protein, except it's also fermented in as much as that it's been sitting outside on the top of your house, kind of just vibing like that.
So basically like yogurt that you dried out into a brick.
Kinda, yeah.
Ew.
But then like you can grate it into food, like into a stew to thicken the stew and add flavor, kind of like the way that the Italians use Parmesan. Or you can just like I said, just pop a brick into your mouth and just kind of on it.
Gross.
And then you can take a brick and you can throw it into a jug of water and reconstitute it, and basically it's like dehydrated milk with its bonus fermenty goodness.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, you wanted to talk about ferments, and we're going on ferments.
I'm glad we started with the weird one, so that everything is.
Yeah, we're actually trying to make some right now. We're trying to make some right now, but we're not a Mongolian steppe. We're the Midwest, and so
it's gonna take a little while.
I don't know. I've got a bunch of cheese hanging on string that's kind of sweating in the summer heat.
Okay then.
We'll see how it goes.
We had a question. Does it melt like cheese or?
No.
No, does not melt.
Is rock.
Okay, noted. Gross. Okay. So speaking of ferments. There is one book. Okay, there's a lot of books, but there's one book that I always recommend when it comes to all things fermented.
Right, and we actually have this book in the previous conversation, and I'm going to pull up.
We do.
You go ahead.
So I've got some pictures of it on there. This is my copy of it. It's called the Noma Guide to Fermentation, and it is. If you don't have a copy of this book, fucking get on it. It is literally like the best book about ferments I have ever read. Here, I'll hold it a little higher so you can see it. It says it's the Noma Guide to Fermentation. Highly recommend. Like there is not a bad recipe in here. There's some that would be difficult to do because unless you're Noma and have access to hundreds of pounds of defatted hazelnut flour, you're probably not going to be able to
Hey,
do them.
that's a thing.
But there's also a lot of like really basic ones in here. There's also a lot of just really interesting ones, and it covers everything from. And of course, this isn't sponsored. This is just like I'm a humongous fan, and like
No, we just love Noma.
we just love Noma. Noma's great. Like I follow most of the Noma chefs on Instagram, and you should totally do the same. And yeah, it's freaking phenomenal. There's so many recipes in there that I want to try, and they just look so damn good. So one of the chefs you should absolutely go follow on Instagram is I believe his name is David Zilber. He is featured heavily in the book. It's this fella, the guy on the left here. And yeah, they make just such awesome stuff. A lot of their food features fermented stuff, so it's like, it might take them 3 or 4 minutes to like assemble a dish because it's a lot of like raw stuff and herbs and stuff. But then they're using ferments that took them 6 months to make. So, and for those of you who are not familiar with Noma, Noma is the second best restaurant in the world. They know their shit. Like,
and like we talked about in, I think, one of our previous talks, they were featured in the documentary called Wasted with Anthony Bourdain, where they're talking about, the amount of food waste that is created, which is another reason to do fermentation.
Yes. We had another donation from Cafe Machiavelli. Thanks for mentioning Noma Guide. Got my copy yesterday, and it good. I'm glad you enjoy. It really is a fantastic book. Seriously, for people to comment.
We also
fucking get.
We also have a question from Artem.
Okay.
He wants to know about the difference between fermentation and salting.
Okay, so the long and the short version is salting. Typically, you're just using that to draw moisture. I mean, it depends how salty. It depends. It literally depends how salty. If it's like a little bit of salt, it could still ferment. Whereas if it's a lot of salt, it's so much salt that it kills everything off, so things don't ferment. The short version.
Part of this has to do with the bacterial activity. So if you have a small amount of salt, you're actually selecting for certain types of microorganisms that allow you to do certain metabolic processes that change the composition of what you're working with. Whereas with salting, you're just going for scorched earth. I want everything dead. I just want it dry.
Yeah, and that last point is really important. The salt is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs water, so it will literally pull water out of whatever you've got caked in salt. There's also another really cool technique, which I really want to try, where you make a salt crust and then coat the thing that you want to bake in the salt crust. And you usually do this with like fish or meat. Mm-hmm. And then you bake it, and so it kind of does the same thing, where the salt will absorb and trap any moisture in the thing, so you can still get that like kiln roasted, like baked goodness out of the item, but without losing any of the moisture, so it stays like super duper juicy. And so I really want to try this. It looks hella good. There's a beef tenderloin cooked in a salt crust, and it just looks so fucking good.
Yeah.
Whereas salt ferment, and I think Gabe has a salt ferment that he wants to show off. So
my god, I'm so excited! We just did it today.
Yeah. So do you want to show off your salt ferment?
Yeah. So we are doing Moroccan salted lemons. Can I get this in? Okay. See, I can't look at the YouTube
You're
screen.
large. You're
there we go.
Yeah, you're in front.
I'm still large. I'm always large. Bear paws.
Wink.
So we are doing Moroccan salted lemons, and so yes, there is a small amount of liquid, which you normally don't associate with a ferment, but this is because it was literally made like an hour ago. So what you do is you cut the lemons into almost but not quite quarters. So you put grooves in them. You pack the grooves with salt, and then you cram them into a jar. And I've got these pretty wet jars, and they're beautiful. Um, and then the salt begins to pull the liquid out. And then the lemons ferment in their own brine. And then we're going to take this and we're going to stuff it in the back of the fridge so that it ferments extra slow, because bacterial action happens in the refrigerator. Obviously, everybody's had rotten food, but it happens really slowly. And so I'm just going to ignore this for the next 2 years.
You also the way that Gabe does it, where he just makes 4 like incisions into the lemon and packs it with salt. You can also just slice the lemons and then just like kind of layer them with salt, and it works the same.
It doesn't. It's not the same.
It
ain't the same.
It's the same. It's totally the same, and I will fight you on this.
Have you actually made it?
Yeah. And also, there's a really...
Was it as good as mine?
Yeah, man. It tasted like fermented lemons. There's actually a fantastic video on how to do this, made by Uri Tuchman, which is also one of my favorite like maker channels. It's such a fun video because the video is how to make preserved lemons. But he's like, okay, well, I need to make preserved lemons. Wait, I don't have a cutting board. So he like makes a cutting board. It's like, okay, now we can... Wait, I need to chop the lemons. So he makes the knife, and then he like makes a tray to put... It's very funny. It's like an 11-minute video. His whole thing is that he just like makes everything with hand tools. Like he almost never uses... Other than like a little hand drill, like it's all hand tools all the time. And he just makes really nice shit. I appreciate that. That's all I'm saying. So it's just like, you get to like learn how to make fermented lemons, but also it's a bunch of like woodworking and metalworking and stuff. It's just a cute video. I like it. So salt ferments are fun. You know, they can be very delicious. The preserved lemons that we've just been talking about, basically they like super intensify the like lemon flavor. Yeah, if anyone's got a link to the Uri Tuchman video, can somebody put that in there? I mean, if you look up how to make preserved lemons, it should come up. It's just a picture of a lemon in a vice. So yeah, if somebody can get a link to that in the comments, that would be great. So yeah, salt ferments are good. There's other salt ferments. The Japanese are known for their salt ferments as well. They've made salted pickled plums, which are called umeboshi, which are fantastic.
We're growing shiso leaves right now.
Yay! There's a traditional seasoning where it's basically made of the salted pickled plums, so the umeboshi, and shiso leaves, which is this wonderful herb, which if you don't have any growing in your home garden, fucking get on it, because it's delicious, and super easy to grow. Yeah, see, so some people put put a link in the comments, so thank you. But yeah, so you can make this mixture of umeboshi and shiso leaves, and it is glorious. I ended up mixing them, and I've had it slowly fermenting in my fridge for like almost a year, and it's getting real good, like real good. I also brought some of the other ferments. I have a lot of ferments in my fridge. Like the whole bottom shelf is all just ferments. And so I didn't want to bring all of them out because that seemed excessive, but I picked a few.
But now we're gonna bring all of them out.
No,
Speaking of which.
Oh. Qu'est-ce que c'est?
I need to change it so that I can see myself in real time.
What
this is the pu'er.
Oh, the weird rotted tea leaves that they insist are better.
No, this is fermented tea leaves, and they are significantly better.
Once you compost tea, it's not fucking tea anymore. Like,
this is not composted. This is the good shit right here, dude.
I don't know. I
Look
mean,
at that.
I've only had pu'er once, and I was not a fan. Like,
That's because you like stuff fruity.
I know I don't like bitter, and it's very okay.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know what pu'er is, pu'er is basically you take tea leaves, and you, I joke that they're composted. They're not really composted. They're just kind of left in a pile to rot artistically, which is
That
all
is
fermenting.
also not true. I mean, that's how people talk about fermentation when they don't understand fermentation. And I know you understand fermentation, so don't be a dick.
So either way, it's a fermented tea. So it becomes extra like earthy. Like you kind of lose. It's sort of the opposite of matcha. Like matcha is like super fresh tea leaves
Indeed.
that are like flash dried and then ground into a powder. Whereas pu'er is the opposite of that, where it's super like aged and
It's packed into cakes and then it's left to sit in for a long time.
yeah, it's like really old
And it's
tea.
it's really good though, and it doesn't lose any of its caffeine content. Let me tell you what.
Yeah.
But this is actually the similar method to the black tea.
Yeah. Well, so black tea is oxidized. It's not fermented.
Fermentation and oxidation are the same fucking process. It's just on different speeds, dude.
No, fermentation means with microbes. Oxidation is just air.
Right, because there's no microbes in air. That's a thing.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't say that like like if a pipe rusts, you wouldn't say that it's been fermented. You'd say it's been oxidized.
It's all just the same
there's a
metabolic
difference.
process on different. No, it's all the same metabolic process on different scales. This is the same reason that rusting, setting something on fire, and you breathing is all oxidation. Like it's always oxidation.
Right, but one's a metabolic process, one's just a straight up chemical reaction, and one's fire. So
No, but that's just like your scale. That's a scale issue. On a chemical level, they're all basically the same. They just happen at different rates.
and with different reactants and catalysts and reaction conditions.
It's all an oxidative process, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on. So I've got some of the other ferments that I had in my fridge, which I'm going to show off. So this is the first one. This one I know that Gabe will like because he likes the spicy. So this is my fermented hot sauce. So this was made with jalapenos and some big red chilies, and some peaches as a sugar source, so that the bacteria and stuff have something to ferment with, as well as a little bit of gochujang and miso. So and a little bit of garlic. So yeah, it's very spicy and it's real good. It's real good. It's real tasty. You get kind of that funk from the miso, but it's also just spicy and tangy and delicious. And both me and Gabe have made many a hot sauce over the year. Hey Gabe, you want to tell them about your peri peri I?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so last year, right around this time, actually, I was in Portugal, and they have this fantastic hot sauce called piri piri. And
Oh man.
and it's really freaking hot. And so they had the piri piri that they gave the tourists, and then they had the piri piri that the locals had. And so yeah, that's some tourist piri piri right there. And so it's basically a fermented hot sauce that is fermented in brandy or wood alcohol or
Yeah, I think it's
what we call
I think
whiskey.
it looked closer to this. But yeah, so it's making a fermented hot sauce, but with like hard liquor.
Yeah. So instead of like just blending up the peppers and fermenting them, you also mix it with a hard liquor and then just let it sit.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
Holy crap! If that isn't hot. Oh yeah, boom.
Yeah.
Here we go.
there you go. Here, wait, I'll
And so
make you
this
big.
is the stuff that the locals were eating.
Do you want to show
And
the actual label? You're showing the side.
I'm trying.
All right, back up, man. You're out of the focal plane of the camera.
Hey, you know what? I'm not an Instagram model. It's my bad.
Yeah. So this stuff is very spicy, and so what's kind of neat is the alcohol extracts the capsaicin from the peppers in a way that just like straight up water won't. But alcohol is basically just pre-vinegar. So the alcohol will be oxidized into vinegar. So you get that like acidic-ish from it, but you also get like lots of capsaicin. So it is toasty. It is proper toasty. Yeah, so that's piri piri.
Yeah, and there's actually another jar. We kind of used all of it, but I made a batch of my own. Not as good. I don't have the skills to make this, but it's frighteningly hot and fantastic. And most good hot sauces are actually ferments as well.
Yes. That's I mean that's like there's a sort of a misconception that it's just like you put chilies in a blender and then let her rip. But no, it's the ferment is where most of the yum comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, for people who like hot ones, I believe most of the hot sauces that they show on that show are fermented. But okay, I mean, fermenting with ghost peppers sounds painful though.
But I've got these reapers, dude.
Oh god. This is why I have mixed feelings about eating at Gabe's house, because there's like a 50% chance that like at the last second he'll just be like, oh look, I'm just gonna throw a few drops of this in, and by the end of it I'm like, I can taste my butthole. What have you done? Like,
it's good for you. Builds character. So this is a random comment, but I'm liking it. So, and we're talking about ferments. I don't know how to actually pronounce this name, so my apologies, but Tomas?
Okay, yeah.
Do you know about the whole fermented apples that they use with the rye starter? Because I cannot get these to work.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so there's this like Russian ferment.
Okay.
It's from Poland. I know it's not Russia. They're just kind of like adjacent-y. Where you take like very crispy apples and you put them in a jar. You don't crush them like you do with the lemons. You're just going to put them in there. You throw in some mint leaves, and then you cover them with water, and then you throw in rye starter, like with sourdough, like a sourdough starter into the thing, and then you ferment these apples. Maybe I'll send you a link. I didn't even think about this, but
interesting.
Yeah, and I've been trying to make them for 2 years, and I can't. Russian brined apples.
I mean, it sounds
so you can.
Here, I'll see if I can look it up.
Get my face off the screen. Pull that up. Yeah, they're pickled apples.
I mean, they look. These ones. Does this look right?
There's a lag, so I can't answer your question yet. Yep, that's the thing. Beets and bones. That's the place that I've been using my recipe for.
I'm gonna click it. We're gonna see what is here. This sounds interesting. Okay, what does this use? Oh god, did they do the thing where it's like 10,000 words and then the thing at the end? So 2 tablespoons of sprouted rye flour, 2 tablespoons of rye flour, 2 tablespoons of sourdough starter, honey, mint, apples. It sounds good. Like,
it sounds awesome, and look at those apples. Those are super dope.
They are. They look like there's like a weird, almost translucent. Yeah, like translucent quality to them. I mean, I happen to have some starter right here. This this leads really nicely into one of the other things I wanted to talk about. So,
yeah, but you gotta have, like, trust me, you gotta have super crisp apples.
Okay. I mean, I've got a farmer's market down the street from me. I can get this can be arranged. So this is some starter that I just made recently. So I don't know if I need to just reorient myself to make sure that this is okay. Yeah. So this you'll see that this says D47 carotene. At least hopefully you can see that. This is not your regular sourdough starter. This is my bespoke genetically modified sourdough starter. And this is some of the bread I made with my bespoke genetically modified sourdough starter. So I used
Bespoke.
Yeah, it is bespoke. It's organic.
It's not GMO. It's bespoke.
It's definitely not GMO because it's definitely it's GMO. Like,
yeah, but what is it? But what is it?
I know, right? Like, anyway, but so this yeast was modified to produce beta carotene, which for those who are unfamiliar with biochemistry, beta carotene is one of the things that contributes to the color of carrots as well as many other vegetables, and is the pre-molecule to vitamin A. So when you eat things that contain beta carotene, they're broken down in your digestive system to make vitamin A. So the yeast that I used to make this were engineered to produce carotene, so anything that you make with this has vitamin A in it. Like, how freaking neat is that? So the video that will be coming out on my main channel, so this channel, in 3 days or 4 days, I'm waiting to hear back from it's a sponsored video, so I'm waiting to just get approval from them. But as soon as they give me the okay to publish, it will be made public. And I will take you through the entire process of making the yeast, brewing with it, fermenting, making the sourdough starter, making that bread. And yeah, so it's gonna be pretty cool. There's a question: why isn't the bread orange? Because the amount of carotene is not high enough to do that, but it's high enough that it's detectable, and it's high enough to give you a boost of vitamin A. So like if you were actually eating the stuff regularly, like you would be consistently getting, more vitamin A than if you were eating nothing but normal bread. However, I talk about this in the video, there's some tweaks that I can make to the construct to make it more orange. Because you'll see in the video that it's very yellow. Beta carotene is actually vibrant yellow, it's not orange. The reason carrots look orange is not because of the beta carotene alone, it's because the precursor to beta carotene is lycopene, which is vibrant red. So carrots are orange because there's lycopene and carotene. But there's a tweak that I can make to the plasmid, and maybe I'll do it for a future video if I can ever get it to fucking work, where you add an extra copy of one of the genes, and so you end up with higher lycopene content and higher carotene content, and so the colonies actually look like properly orange rather than bright yellow. But yeah, so that's that. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Definitely stay tuned for that on Monday or Tuesday. I'm really excited. It is one of the nicest videos I think I've made. I was very tired making it, but I had a lot of fun making it, and it's one I've been working on for literally months.
It was so long. But worth it.
Yeah, I think it is one of my longer videos, but I'm also moving towards making longer and longer videos, because then I can cover more complex things, and it's sort of the culmination of a lot of videos that I've made previously. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. But yeah, so that's my weird GMO bread, and I particularly like it because the yeast that I use for that protocol have like a non-GMO sticker on the packet. So like I started with a thing that was advertised as non-GMO, and I'm like, not for long, motherfucker. Like, so yeah, that was fun. But yeah, that's real fun. I'm really excited for that video. So stay tuned.
All right, let's get down to the brass tacks here. We're talking about fermentation. What's everybody's favorite fermentation?
Soy sauce?
Yeah, it's koji, baby.
Okay.
Everybody loves koji.
That it is.
Yeah.
I just expected you to be brandishing some fucking like soy sauce at this point. Okay, so if we're talking about koji, I'll switch over to the koji page because koji is.
Let's switch over to the koji page because everybody needs to know about koji.
Yeah, if you don't know about koji,
so the same thing that everybody's nervous
that.
about black mold is aspergillus. So koji has been bred over just centuries and centuries and centuries of time, and it's the aspergillus that doesn't make you sick.
Yeah. It was first mentioned
because all of the other aspergillus make you sick.
Yes, most aspergillus are not food.
Yeah, not food.
So koji was first mentioned. So wait, I've got the history of it pulled up. Koji was first mentioned in the rites of the Zhou dynasty in China in 300 BC. So it's been used for at least 2,300 years. But I mean, that's just the first mention of it. It was probably used before then. It just hadn't been either given a name or written down on something that we have a record of.
And so it's been selectively bred to be white, so that you know when you have contamination on your ferment. You can just look at it.
The really like intense people who use this, there are other colors. It does come in other
they get
colors.
All super weird about it.
So it's like if you know what you're doing, you can use the other colors. But the white one is particularly good because then you know if something's gone terribly wrong.
Right, and it's only been in the last 100 years actually that koji hasn't, the use of koji hasn't been Longtail Knowledge. So the concept of Longtail Knowledge, for those of you who don't know, is this concept that there's basically there's a big chunk of knowledge, and then you get out into the standard deviations, and that's usually hipster stuff, and then you get into the stuff where you actually can't find it on the internet. And so even a decade ago, for instance, there was no way for me to find a way to make fish sauce unless I spoke Thai. And so this becomes what we call long tail knowledge, which is just outside of certain areas. You have to actually talk to people, human beings. You can't look it up in a book. You can't find it without talking to a human. And so koji actually wasn't even really used outside of a very exclusive group of people, not because they were excluding people, but just because they were aspergillus nerds.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're going to be aspergillus.
There were bio nerds for all time, basically.
Yeah. Like original old school biohackers back in 300 BC being like, I'm going to selectively breed this aspergillus so that it breaks down the sugars in my rice so that I can make sake.
Yeah.
So
sake.
So
speaking of which, what are the things that you use koji? So the traditional things you use koji for.
What are the things you don't use koji for?
I know. In the same way that most problems can be solved with chitosan, most food problems can be solved with koji. It is just as an organism, it is fascinating. It has so many different enzymes in it. So the traditional things that koji is used to make are rice vinegar, soy sauce, miso, sake, and all the sort of things that go in that realm. The reason being, rice is actually a very shitty thing to attempt to brew with, because the starches in rice are so tough the yeast can't break them down. So what you do is you use a mixture of koji and yeast, and so the koji will break down, using all of the enzymes that it contains, it'll break down those really tough starches and release sugars which the yeast can then ferment. So that sake is not possible without koji. You cannot just put rice in a bucket and throw some yeast at it and hope for the best. It's not going to work.
Especially in North America, because koji is native to a certain region.
Yeah.
And it's not native to North America. And so
at all.
my first experiment with trying to make soy sauce, I followed all of the instructions from a translated Japanese blog, and this was 15 years ago. And then they're like, and then you just put them out in the sun with a cloth over them. And the reason that you do that is that because there was koji naturally in the atmosphere. It was just like, so it's like a native sourdough starter type of thing, except for all sorts of wonderful stuff. And it doesn't exist here. So let me tell you, that didn't work out well.
So there's a question about, can you buy this? Yes, you can absolutely buy koji. I have literally a bag of it sitting over there because you can get it on Amazon. It's very readily. You can get it at most Asian markets. You can also get
depends on where you're at.
Okay, yeah, but you can also get what are called sake balls, which is basically like a pre-mix of koji and yeast. What?
Sake balls are a completely different animal, dude.
Yeah, but it's still koji and yeast. It's not quite the same, but it's the lazy way of making
sake. There's like 13 different things in sake balls.
Yeah.
It's not.
Take sake ball, throw in yeast juice, in rice juice, end up with something approximating sake. It's not going to be perfect.
That's true.
But it's the lazy way of doing it.
But I mean, if these people want koji, then
but yes, pure koji
there's a couple
you
of
can buy.
places on Amazon that sell it.
Yeah.
Also, I have koji, and if you want some koji, I can make koji stabs, and I can send you koji.
Yeah, but I mean, you can get them on Amazon.
For shipping.
They are readily. It is readily available. It comes as dry rice kernels. So I mean, in the same way that in this image you can see the koji growing on the rice. They basically do this. Like they grow the koji on the rice, and then they just like dry it out, and the koji lasts like this for anywhere from 6 months to a year. So it's really, really stable. And it's also covered in spores. So the spores are also extremely stable and last for years and years and years.
I mean, that's the whole point.
And that's the whole point of a spore. This is why you get mold growing on stuff. It's just spores floating around in the air. So yeah, highly recommend getting some koji. There's I know on Bon Appetit they've done some koji ferments. I plan on doing some koji ferments on my second channel, The Taste Emporium. Koji's fantastic. I really like it. It really should be, I think, everyone's first ferment because it's so easy. Like it is harder to make wine than it is to make something with koji. Like and wine is basically boil some juice, throw some yeast at it, put an airlock on it, call it a day. Like
and like it's really easy to talk about sake because everybody likes to get drunk, but literally it's used for everything.
Yeah.
Like,
and so I mean beyond the traditional stuff.
You can rub it on oh my gosh, you can rub it on steaks.
Yes.
And then let them
just, like,
age.
Aged. So you like
fermented aged koji steak.
Yeah, you blend up the rice kernels that are like coated in the koji dust, and you just cake it onto your steak and just let it sit for a day or two. And it gets amazing. So I was mentioning that there's lots of enzymes in the koji, right? So the enzymes, they have peptidases, they've got lipases, they've got so many different saccharide digesting enzymes. So like, did you know that the lactase pills that you buy at the grocery store are made out of koji? They literally grow koji on like lactose, and they just grow tanks of this stuff and then extract the lactose from the media. And I've actually done it. It totally works. So it would be amazing. And so, yeah, you can use koji for steaks. You can use it for all the miso. But one of the reasons that I like, this book is because there's like 5 chapters on koji. Not recipes. Fucking chapters. They've used it for everything. They've made miso out of things that no reasonable person would have ever thought to make miso out of, but it totally works. I mean, do you want to tell them about the magical rice patties?
Oh God, they were so good. Okay. So we took a bunch of koji and we grew it on a bunch of rice. We actually made our own koji fermentation station, and we did it in a super traditional method. We had cedar boxes lined with cotton, and it was beautiful. It was a broken refrigerator that we repurposed. Broken refrigerators are great for fermentation, by the way.
It's true.
And so we had all of this cogified rice. And
my new favorite verb.
Cogified. I cogified that cat.
That would be weird.
I cogified this lab equipment. One of my favorite things to do with leftovers is to make it into pancakes. Like, you can take chili and throw some flour and an egg into it and make it into pancake batter, and then you have savory chili pancakes. Boom. You can do that with just about anything. It's really great. So we had all this cogified rice, and I was like, okay, I'm going for it. And I just smushed up the cogified rice, added an egg so that it made it into patties, and then fried it. You know how you get like a sugar headache or an ice cream headache, or that sensation of too much of a thing? This was an umami headache, which is the word for savory. It was a savory headache. We actually made
Did you have bacon in there too?
No.
I remember. When you told me
for
about
the frying grease. Just
okay.
for the frying grease.
But hey, that is an important note. So you made koji. You took koji rice, mixed an egg into it, and then fried it as patties in bacon fat.
Well, what else are you going to use? Butter, like a peasant? No, you're going to use bacon like a real peasant because we're poor.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so we fried these rice patties in bacon fat, and the umami was so strong that it was like it gave me a headache. They were good. They were delicious. I didn't want to stop eating them, but I also really had to stop eating them.
I need to make a batch of these. I've been meaning to. I bought that bag of koji specifically to do this, and I've just been so just busy with other shit that I never got around to it. I need to do that because it sounds glorious. Like, yeah, I mean, koji is just so fantastic. Like, I mean, one of the, like, there's so many things in that book that are just, they look so good that I was reading, it was like my bedtime book. I'm like, sitting in bed, I'm like, I need a way to relax. I'm just reading about these, like, ferments. I'm like, oh my god, that sounds so good. Like, dude, I'm flipping through the pages, and just, like, the music from Shokugeki is, like, going in my head, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's so good it hurts. Like,
oh god, we have done a thing. We have caused a problem that needs to be addressed.
Oh.
Okay, so, Beep Boop, Scrap AI, can you pull up the paper about how MSG papers are all about systemic racism?
Oh, I love this. Yeah, okay, so all the people in the comments are like, MSG headaches are a thing. No,
yep, we're going to just cut this off at the head.
Yeah,
not acceptable.
This needs to,
nope.
killing this in his crib.
Shut it down.
Yeah, so the reason people
I get a headache with too much anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason
so there was a meta study.
Can I? So the short version of this is the reason people think MSG gives you, like, headaches and health effects and all this stuff is racism. That's it. There's no evidence that MSG causes any of these problems, because keeping in mind, MSG is in fucking everything. It's in tomatoes, it's in steak, it's in most meats, it's in everything. MSG is just monosodium glutamate. Glutamate is an amino acid. It's in everything. So the only reason that people think that MSG is, like, a problem is because they would eat Chinese food, and then they were really racist, and they would, feel sick because they probably just ate their body weight in, like, delicious food, and then they're like, oh, it must be the MSG because reason. I don't fucking know.
Because the food is so good that they cram their faces with it, and then they're like, oh, it must be MSG, but also
not the 4,000 calories you just put in your face hole. Like,
and the this paper was the original paper on MSG headaches and issues was written in, like, the colonial 30s or something like that, and when people were basically kicking the shit out of China in San Francisco, and this guy was just like, oh, their food is so good, it makes me sick. It must be the food because they're Chinese. So, let's just not do that.
Yeah.
All right? Everyone knock it off. Let's talk about fermentation.
Anyhow. So yeah, that's that. Glad we addressed that. Okay, so let's talk about some other ferments.
Sorry, not the current political time to casually do that shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're not talking about the things that are on Twitter right now because I'll scream. Okay, moving on.
I had to tell him not to talk about stuff. That's how bad it is. I'm the reasonable one.
Yeah, shit's bad when he's the reasonable one. It's like Abbott and Costello thing we got going on doesn't usually work when he's the reasonable one. Like, shit is bad. Anyway, moving on. Let's look at some other ferments. What do you got? What do you got? Okay, so this is another one that I really love. This one's actually going to show up in another video that I'm working on. And actually, this is a perfect opportunity to show off one of my other favorite books, which, if you like good food and also want just more information about how to make amazing food, especially of the French variety, then this is the book for you. It is called Jacques Pepin, New Complete Techniques. So Jacques Pepin is one of the most famous chefs of all time. He like, the idea of like the TV like celebrity chef, it started with him. This dude he's like 90. He's been cooking since he was 5. Like, in the words of Anthony Bourdain, if Jacques says that that's the way to do something, that's the way to do something. That's God speaking. Like,
and if Anthony Bourdain says it,
right? So yeah, this is one of my favorite books. This hurts to read. There's so much fucking information in here, and it's all so good. This is like how I've been learning French cooking. Like the original version of this was literally just called La Technique. Literally the technique. Like, dude wrote the book on how to French cooking. It is amazing. Highly recommend getting yourself a copy. So the reason I bring up Jacques Pepin, other than the fact that he's fantastic and you should absolutely go watch all of his like hundreds of videos because they're all amazing, is one of my favorite recipes from that I learned from him is called Galantine, also called a Balantine, and so basically what this is, so Galantines are sort of an umbrella term. Lots of things can be made into a Galantine. Personally, I like chicken Galantines, where basically it's an entire chicken that you completely debone and then stuff it. And so I particularly love using these as part of the stuffing. So what are these? These are pickled.
Lift them up. I can't see what you're showing.
It's in front of my face.
No.
Face. So it might be a little hard because I know the liquid is a little bit dark. But these are pickled ground cherries, also called Cape gooseberries. So they're these, and I just used them in my latest food video. They're these little round yellow berries that taste a little bit like cotton candy. Like they're very sweet. They're really good. They're very tart. But so these ones were pickled in a balsamic vinegar brine. So they are really tasty. And so like I'll make so for the video, I'm gonna make a video on how to make a Galantine. So all the stuffing is going to contain these pickled ground cherries, as well as probably some rye bread, some spinach, some goat cheese. It's real good. The first time I ever made a Galantine was while I was visiting Gabe, and it was okay. It was okay. It was a good first attempt. I have made many since that first one, and I've gotten really freaking good at it. It's one of my favorite recipes. It's the recipe that, like, if a friend wants to, like, learn how to, like, make good food, I'm like, we're making Galantines. Because it's a lot of, like, technical knife skills, so you get really comfortable using a knife, but also like like you can fill it with whatever you want. You can coat it in whatever you want. So it's an excuse to like branch out and experiment with different flavors and flavor combinations. And at the end, it's like you get these perfect rounds of meat and stuffing, and it's just so good. I love it. Absolutely love it. You can do like, wild mushrooms, you can do various herbs, you can do greens, you can do all kinds of different pickles, you can do whatever you want. It's awesome. Um, I'll age my chicken, so like I'll debone it and then just coat the skin in a mixture of salt and baking soda, and then leave it like flat in my on a wire rack in my fridge overnight, so it dries the skin out, so that when you wrap it and then roast it, you get like super crispy skin. It's really good. But yeah, and it's just an excuse to use interesting ferments on the inside. Like you can use some of the fermented hot sauce, or your weird pickles, or some kraut, or whatever else. We just had a donation. I just want to address this really quickly. So thank you, Card Jesus, which is always funny saying your name.
Um,
But yeah.
yeah. So let's actually address something more reasonable. So what's the advantages of fermenting at a low temperature? So, man, this is weird. I want to be like, show of hands, anybody who's tried to make wine.
It's not how the internet works.
No, hi. I can't see you. So it turns out that that yeast produces different metabolites at different temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the reasons that when you're making wine, you want to do your whites or beer.
Like there's a difference between like a lager and an ale.
Yeah. So like I'm going with wine because it feels, because one, wine's hella easy and I make it all the time. But so, if you're going for a white or a fruit or a red, you do them at different temperatures because they break down the sugars differently, and then they create different metabolites. And so usually if you get above about 22 degrees centigrade, you start to get phenols. And so phenols kind of, if anybody's had like a hard cider, like I love hard cider. And we've actually got like these 3 crabapple trees down the road, crabapples as big as plums. And it makes this awesome hard cider.
Can confirm. Also, just really quick, Seth, I saw your comment. I'll address it in a minute.
But so if you rush the cider too hard, like if you're trying to ferment too fast, you end up with a phenol taste. And so phenol is that weird aftertaste that you get when you drink a hard cider, and you get like a little bit of I licked a bike tire kind of flavor in your mouth.
God.
That
know what I'm
talking about.
That grape
right?
juice one you made was so bad.
Oh so bad.
God, it literally felt like gargling with a fucking car tire. It was so gross.
Yeah, see, you can't rush that. So it's better to actually
it was like
keep
store-bought,
them in their happy
store-bought
zone,
grape juice
so that they're
heated
making
some yeast into. It was awful.
So you want them to make the things that they make for you, but if you push them in different temperature regions, they'll actually start to make things that you don't want to necessarily put in your face.
Yeah, in the words of Heston Blumenthal, low and slow is better. Like, like ferments, cooking, low and slow is always better. You always get better flavor.
Exactly, Car Jesus. That is the thing. Too fast, too warm. All right, Seth has a question. We were supposed to answer something.
Yes. So Seth was just asking, would you design a plasmid for oxytrophic yeast on whose gene? It's actually funny. A lot of the yeast that I work with have oxytrophic markers built in. I just don't use them because oxytrophic media is expensive. Like, it's cheaper to buy a bottle of G418 than it is to buy all the frickin' stuff that you need to do oxytrophic media.
Yeah, it's a
It's just
whole ecosystem
that's
of
it.
hardware.
It's not even hardware. It's just you need the yeast nitrogen base, then you need a carbon source, then you need every single fucking amino acid, except the one that you
Okay,
don't want.
this counts as hardware.
It's very frustrating. But so yes,
Yeah.
I will happily do that at some point. I need to invest in oxytrophic media. It's just so expensive. Like I think I think after we finish the computer fundraiser, the next fundraiser is going to be for some oxytrophic media because the spider silk actually I can pull this up. The spider silk, that is not the folder that is supposed to be open. That's the folder we don't talk about.
Ooh. Okay, whoa there. Whoa. Okay, really quick.
Yeah.
Black garlic is not fermented. I'm just like playing through the comments here at this point.
I'm digging up the thing. You do that.
Black garlic is the Maillard reaction, so it's actually more akin to the type of chemical reaction that you get from the browning of bread.
Yeah, it's the it's caramelization just over a month.
Really, really slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got the spider silk plasmid pulled up. I'm gonna move your face so I can show this. So, oh wow, that is not what I wanted. Thank you, Benchling. So you can actually see there's this gene right here. It says P his. So.
Sorry, I'm
What?
still looking at the comments, and somebody mentioned apple jacking.
Oh, cider jacking. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
We'll talk about that in a second. Let me just wrap this up.
Okay.
So the Spider Silk project actually has an oxytrophic marker in it, and so it uses histidine dropout media, which if I can't get the transformation to work, which I've been struggling with, like I have the final, like in case this isn't clear, I have the final Spider Silk DNA. I have a lot of it, and it's in my freezer. The only thing stopping me from making the Spider Silk video is I physically cannot seem to get the stupid fucking DNA into the goddamn yeast. That is it. That is the only problem I'm having, and it's because I'm trying to use this, which is the G418 selection. If I were to use histidine dropout media, it would work instantly. It's just histidine dropout media is like $600 for freaking media. Shut up. We don't talk about that. Let me dream, goddammit. Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, so, but yeah. Anyways,
Okay.
it's been done. I will talk about it on a Who's Gene episode next. So you want to talk about cider jacking? I'll pull up a picture.
Somebody mentioned this concept of cider jacking, and I
love it. It's so good.
Love the concept. I think it's so great because it's all about fucking with the piv nerd.
Okay, good. Whew. As soon as you type in jacking into Google, I was like, please don't be bad. Please don't be bad. Please don't be bad.
Okay. This is why you use safe search. Jesus.
Please not dicks. Please not dicks. There's not even a good picture of it. Oh well.
So cider jacking is this really great, old-timey, but super scientifically sound method. In the same way that a distillery boils your mash and separates the alcohol out from the water in as much as that they boil at different temperatures, you can actually just put everything in the freezer and they freeze at different temperatures. And so you can take a bottle of hard cider and you can freeze it and flip it upside down, put it on a bottle, and it will thaw at different temperatures, because if you have a different boiling temperature, you have a different freezing temperature.
Yeah.
And so the
is there another is there another word for this?
Cider jacking.
No, I know, but fuck it. I'm gonna just check Google. Oh yeah, it's also called Applejack.
Yes, exactly. So Pseudomines says they freeze it repeatedly and filter off the ice. And it's exactly so. You actually just, I mean, you can take a bottle of
anything.
hard cider.
Yeah.
Anything, really. You can take a bottle of anything.
I mean, if you get
you can freeze it into
like one of those gallon jugs of like $2 chuck, like I wouldn't, because you'll hate yourself later, but
no, I mean, that's technically brandy, okay?
Fractional freezing. That's the word for this. So it's called freeze distillation. So yeah, basically it's freeze
distillation. Thank you, Subatomica.
Yeah. So yeah, freeze distillation. It's what he was talking about. You just freeze it, tip the bottle upside down, and then just wait. And then at some point, like, it's weird. It'll go from like a drip, drip, drip to then all of a sudden all of the alcohol just drains out instantly. It's very weird.
And then there's a solid block of ice left.
Yeah. And whatever's left is just super concentrated.
Back in the olden days, what they would do is they would take a 50-gallon drum. They would have a fantastically large apple harvest. They would can and eat and give away and sell all of the apples that they possibly could, and then they would also just cram some apples into this drum, cover it up with water, hammer the lid on, and then let it cook in the sun. That's distillation. I mean, that's fermentation right there. They're making cider.
Yeah.
Then it got really cold because winter happens, and so the whole drum would freeze into a solid brick. And then after the first, end of the frost, they would tap the bottom of the drum. They'd put a tap on it, and they would just start pulling off what came out. And that was cider jacking or apple jacking. And that's how they would do that. The laziest version of making brandy ever.
Yep. And so, Gabe has done this many times. I've done this many times. Basically, the last time... So while I was visiting Gabe the last time, he had made some crab apple, like pressed crab apple cider, which was this like fluorescent pink. It was glorious. It was really tasty. It was really tart. And then he, fractionally distilled one of the bottles, and what came out was like a teacup's worth of hyper concentrated crabapple cider brandy stuff. It was
awesome.
It was awesome. It was so tart that like it could wake the dead. Like it was really good, but like I don't know if I could drink a whole glass of it. It was intense, like proper intense. So, if you've never tried this, just get a cheap bottle of wine, freeze it, and just tip it upside down and wait. Like, it's just fun. It's like it.
Okay, now we're just teaching people how to get drunk. Let's talk about ferments.
Is there a difference?
We are talking about.
Those are the same, Gabe. Alcohol is the only drug you can make by accident. Like,
or in jail.
Or in jail. Yeah, it's the only drugs you can make by accident or in jail. Don't do drugs, kids. Stay in school. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you've got so my grandfather used to make his own wine, and I didn't really know him. I think I met him once. But I remember him taking us through a tour of his little home winery thing. Like he had a big old fashioned wine press, like one of the wooden kind with a big like turn crank at the top. And so he would just go to the store and he would buy a bunch of grapes when they were in season and then press them all. And his basement was just full of like 5-gallon carboys that were just full of his homemade wine. And then you just get fucked up on wine. Like,
yeah,
he's a little old Italian man. He was a funny. He was a funny guy. But yeah, so that's kind of fun. There's a comment about methanol, and I actually got an email about this or a comment about this at some point recently, asking if methanol in ferments are a problem. And so I actually learned where. My friend Nigel, who runs the channel Nile Red, I was chatting with him about alcohol distillation, and I learned about why people were afraid of methanol in alcohol. So every bit of alcohol, if you drink every alcoholic beverage you've ever had, unless it's distilled, has alcohol or methanol in it rather. So like every cider, every wine, there is some quantity of methanol, acetone, all kinds of stuff in there. The reason
Yeah,
why,
if you're using distillery terms or old timey terms, they call it the heads and the tails.
yeah, well, so I was getting there. So the reason why people think that methanol makes you go blind, which it does, is because back in the days of moonshine, when alcohol was illegal, the like people who would make moonshine were not necessarily uh, artisans of the trade, to put it lightly. So what they would do is they would literally just
They were entrepreneurs.
oh god. But so what they would do is they would just immediately start putting in jars everything that came over as they were distilling, which nowadays we know is a terrible practice because the first thing that comes over is methanol and acetone. So most of the jars were fine, but it was basically a game of like the worst kind of roulette because some poor bastard was going to get the one jar that had nothing but methanol in it, and that person would go blind because they're drinking straight methanol. Like at the concentrations that it's at in normal cider or beer or wine, it's fine. Your body processes it. It's not a big deal. But when you're drinking a quart of nothing but methanol and acetone, that's gonna fuck you up a little bit. So the thing is, if they were to
And
take
not in the good way.
and not the good way. If you were to take all of the things that they distilled, dump it in a bucket, and then rebottle it, it'd be fine because you're still maintaining that ratio of methanol to ethanol, and it would be totally fine. The issue, though, is the one poor bastard who got the tainted jar of what, as Gabe says, the heads. And so now we know that
Right. Well, and also the tails. So the way that
tails
this
aren't
works,
methanol. Tails are the flavor compounds.
yeah, but it's also not eats.
Yeah, you don't want to drink that on its own.
Yeah. So if you're talking in old timey distillery terms, you're going to talk about the head, the heart, and the tail. And so this has to do with this was the old language for talking about the different boiling points of the different types of alcohols. And so the heads were your methanol.
And acetone.
And so the first, and acetone. And those things.
Yummy.
And so those would come off, and you would actually let the still run just like into the ground. You would just pour it off.
Yeah. Or if you're collecting in like a
like
jar or something, you just like yeet the first 2 or 3 of them.
Yep, you're just like now, and then you get your alcohol, and then at the end you have a lot of flavor compounds, which in high concentrations were also damaging, and so you had to make sure that you timed all of this stuff appropriately.
And also you can do it kind of so the first like the heads you just yeet, like there's no good test for it. You just like throw out the first couple of jars, and you account for how much alcohol you're expecting. Like if you're doing like a 55-gallon drum worth of mash, you're going to be throwing out a lot more liquid at the start than if you were doing like 1 liter. But once you've thrown out the first bit, then you've got your hearts. And then when you start to, like, when the smell changes, like, it'll go from just smelling like straight up alcohol.
You throw out the heads. You keep the hearts.
Sorry, yeah. As the hearts come through, it'll go from smelling like alcohol to smelling like whatever you fermented to make the alcohol in the first place. So, let's say you fermented bananas, it would start reeking of bananas as you get through the ferment because those compounds come out later. So you actually save the tails. You don't just throw them out. And traditionally, the way that you do it is you then take all your hearts, mix them in a bucket, and then you start. And you also once you start hitting the tails, you start subbing out the jar more and more frequently. Because the longer you go, the more intense it's going to get, and also the more not good the compounds are for you. But so what you'll save all these different tails, and then you'll basically figure out what ratio of tails to hearts gives you a good tasting alcohol, and then you water it down so you're not just drinking like, you know, flammable fluid. Like vodka is 40%. So like you would take, so to make vodka you would distill you'd like ferment potatoes, distill it, and then take your hearts and then add, 6 parts water kind of thing, for every 4 parts of alcohol, for example. So yeah, it's an interesting process. It's definitely something that for people who like chemistry and people who like fermentation, it's something that's worth doing at least once. It's a fun process. It can take a little bit of investment in equipment, but it's very doable. It's a lot of fun. It's just it's kind of like you sit around the still, like, just relaxing and just keeping an eye on it. And then at the end, you get to spend some time like mixing and you invite a couple of friends over so that you can kind of like each taste it and figure out what works.
One of the things that people get really excited about is interdisciplinary science. Okay, yeah. So we started out this thing talking about fermentation, and then I lost your audio, I think.
I'm just not saying it.
Oh, okay. I gotta stop looking at the screen. Your mouth keeps moving. So one of the things that we talked about is interdisciplinary science. Everybody loves interdisciplinary science. So we started out talking about fermentation. Fermentation, we ended up talking about chemistry. We started talking about how like different temperatures make different, byproducts, metabolites. And now we're talking about this same thing, but on an extremely more chemical level. And now it's not technically biology, but it's all kind of connected.
Yeah, but I mean, also it's kind of something that me and Gabe talk about a lot. Is there are basically, if you get a biology degree and you don't end up working in academia or like some pharma company or something, there are essentially 3 jobs that a biologist major gets, which is some sort of alcohol production, some sort of coffee production, and some sort of weed production. That's it.
Ooh, and farming.
Farming and or gardening. That's it. Those are your options.
Hello, people who work in the agricultural industry. Yeah. How's that going for you right now?
This actually reminded me. So since we're talking about ferments, and we kind of branched into talking about agriculture and because the thing is, these are all related. Like you start with a ferment, making cider, making potato alcohol, whatever. Then you can, distill it, or you can, if you're making sake, you could distill it. If you like, there's so many different things you can do.
Or make hand sanitizer with it.
Or make hand sanitizer if there's a fucking pandemic. Whatever.
Actually, the Indiana whiskey, they're making hand sanitizer right now.
Yeah, for whatever reason, they're all...
Hi, guys. I don't think you're actually watching the stream, but I appreciate it. Yeah. If you could add less perfume, that'd be great. But otherwise, good job. Thanks.
Although they're all making it with glycerin, which drives me nuts, because then you just feel goopy afterwards. Like, use...
Well, we've got hard water here, so everyone's got water softeners, and so we've already got that problem.
Fair. Noted. So there's an anime that I want to bring up, because it's adorable, and also it is extremely relevant. Moyashiman.
The what, huh?
Moyashiman. It is... so cute. It is literally just...
Oh, that one.
It's so cute. So okay, this is a whole anime about fermentation, and also so basically the premise is the main character can see microbes, which everyone he tells this is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Microbes are tiny. How do you see them? But they're all these like super cute like little characters, and they like sass him. It's amazing. But also, like, throughout the episodes, and also after the episodes, they're talking about how ferments work, and which organisms go into what thing, and, like, it's really, really cool. But it's also just adorable, and it's like a little bit like slice of life, but also learning about like sake production and miso production. And he like goes to a university and like joins a microbiome lab focused on fermentation. Like at one point they go to France and they like see how wine is made and how cheese is made, and like you hear the very famous expression, which is in France, which is you can't have bread without wine, you can't have bread and wine without cheese. And bread, wine, and cheese, for those keeping track, are all ferments. They're all the best things, and they're all fermented goods. So yeah, if you like anime and even if you don't, freaking watch this show. It's so cute. I love it. I think they made a live action version, but I don't fuck with that.
No. Let's not do that.
It's just cute. And they also talk about ferments that like I had never heard of before, or I had heard of but I didn't know how they worked. Like there's some really weird ferments out there. There's one where that I believe the Inuit do, where they basically stuff a seal with seagulls, and then they bury it and let it just kind of artisanally rot, and then the seagulls.
Good. Do we want to talk about Denmark now?
They also talk about that one in the show. The weird. So there's this ferment, and I'm blanking on the name, but I'm sure Gabe knows it. It's the stinkiest ferment in the world. I mean, it comes in cans, but the cans are explicitly made to expand because they don't sterilize them. Like, they don't blanch the cans to turn off the fermentation. It keeps fermenting in the can. So they have to make the can expand or it will explode. Thing is, though, it's under pressure. So as soon as you poke it with a can opener, it just sprays ferment at you, and it's the stinkiest ferment on earth. It's awful. Apparently it tastes pretty good, but I'm not... Surstroming. Thank you. Who said that?
Yeah.
Peter. I'm gonna look up a picture of it.
No, don't do it.
Surstroming.
Yeah.
It's gnarly. It's fish. It's fermented, or is it fish or is it shark?
See, I want to talk about this. Boom.
Hakar. Oh, hakar, which is ammonia fermented Greenland shark.
Yep. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this.
How do you spell it?
Hakar? Put it in the comments.
I see you. Oh.
Ooh, it's got an accent they cool. Hey, Carl. Hey, Carl.
Hey, Carl. Hey, Carl. No, oh God, it's so gross. So I have a friend who's had some of this stuff, and apparently it's pretty tasty. It's just you got to get over the fact that it smells like piss, like, which is the point where you lose me. But yeah, it's the sharks are so full of ammonia that they basically auto ferment, but also the ammonia kills off everything else. So it's just these like. You know there's that meme where they're talking about like you have 5 senses, and it's like, and then the student goes, yeah, I can smell pictures, and the teacher goes, what do you mean you can't smell pictures? And then it's just a picture of mercaptoethane. This is the same thing. This is a picture you can smell. Not no bueno. Like I'm sure it tastes fine. It's just so gross.
All right, so we're kind of getting rambly, so let's go back to the questions.
Yeah. So if you've got questions,
I mean, because like this is the problem with fermentation is that you can just go forever.
Somebody mentioned garum. We haven't talked about garum yet. We need to talk about garum.
I mean, it's basically just fish sauce.
Well,
but
that's okay. So
before it's
so let's talk about garum. So garum actually came from the Romans. It is the thing that the Romans put on everything, and so like we're used to modern garum. The closest equivalent to garum these days is fish sauce. So if you've ever had like Thai cuisine or a lot of like Asian cuisine, they use fish sauce or some variant of fish sauce, and there is a whole chapter on garum in the Noma guide, and they use all sorts of things other than just fish, but the original version came from ancient Rome, and it was like their condiment of choice. And so basically, what garum is, it is kind of a ferment, but it is more accurately classed as autolysis. So basically, what you do is you take whole fish, and you essentially blend them, and you put them in a jar, and you just let it go. And the enzymes in the cells of the fish and in their guts and in all this stuff breaks the fish down, and it is not a pleasant smelling thing, let me tell you. And Gabe has made some and had the brilliant idea of attempting to do so inside.
It was in the garage.
Not at first. Yeah, so that's a thing. But so you can make garum out of basically any fish, but the classic uses not anchovies. I forget what specific kind of fish they use these days, but Gabe attempted to do it out of salmon, and it does work. It takes like 6 months. Like it's not a fast ferment. It's not like wine or something where it's done in a few weeks or a month. Like garum takes time, and you gotta just leave it alone. You have to stir it, but you don't mess with it. It just has to do its thing, and then when it's done, so it goes from this like really disgusting looking pulp of just angry fish paste. Like
it still had its eyes.
Yeah, like an eyeball will float by every now and again. Like it looks like peak evil. But over time, it'll separate out, and you'll get this clear layer of the actual stuff that you want floating on the top. And don't get me wrong.
No. On the contrary, sir.
What?
The actual layer on the top is the oil. So you're talking about garum, but if we're talking about the fish sauce that I made,
okay, well,
the top layer was fat.
Okay, under the fat layer, you want the
anaerobic.
You want the aqueous layer of whatever the fuck happens in this thing. So I'll look up fish sauce.
Somebody said fermented milk. Kumis.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's done in barrels. It's a traditionally I think it's actually an aerobic fermentation, I believe. Like it needs air to do its thing. But so you end up with these like vats of just rotting fish. It's not rotting, it's fermenting. But
yeah.
So by the end of it, you end up with this clear liquid that's dark brown and tastes amazing. Smells awful, but it tastes amazing. And it is... I use it in a ton of my cooking. So yeah, fish sauce is the modern equivalent of this, but like you can make this out of anything. So in the Noma guide, they make it out of beef. They make it out of chicken. Yeah. They make it out of insects. They made it out of bee pollen. They made it out of mushrooms. All kinds of stuff.
So
it's
one
really
of the
cool.
important things, though, is that you need to have those enzymatic reactions.
Yeah.
And so making fish sauce with just like your scraps, like, I'm just going to throw a bunch of fish heads in a bucket or something like that, doesn't actually work. You actually need to have the guts, because the guts themselves are actually engaging in a process of releasing those enzymes, even after they're dead, because on a chemical level, biology is kind of weird. Things are just still moving around even after they're dead. And so they continue to act, especially if they're in a jar, where they're safe.
I mean, this is definitely a case with fish, but the other garums don't necessarily need this. So like beef garum, you literally just basically get really high quality steak and you blend it and put it in a jar, and just let it go, and it'll take some time, but it'll get there. And so I know that Noma uses garum prodigiously. Like every one of their dishes uses some form of garum, because it's when you've got an entire fermentation lab, it's the spice of life. But yeah, you end up with this really dark, delicious liquid, and it makes food delicious. You got to deal with the smell. That's a thing. But especially if you use it earlier on in the cooking process, you can get rid of some of the smell but keep a lot of the flavor. Whereas if you want more intense flavor but are more comfortable with the smell, you use it later in the cooking process and don't like roast the shit out of it. But yeah, it's totally a thing. This one, what is this? Looks like flower petals. But yeah, you can make garum out of anything, like whole shrimp, beef, chicken. If you grow crickets, for example, or mealworms, you can turn them into garum. There's the farmer's market down the street from me, sells like buckets of bee pollen, and I very much want to make bee pollen garum. Which, I mean, admittedly, my allergies hurt just thinking about that. But
Yeah,
I know. But hey, once it's fermented, it should be fine. All the allergens get broken down. It's just, I'll need a gas mask making it.
yeah. So one of the things that people are wondering about is like, okay, so you keep saying the word rotting, which like you need to unlearn that.
It's rotting artisanally.
It's bespoke rot.
It's bespoke rotting.
So one of the things that people are talking about or asking is how do you stop this stuff from getting contaminated or,
Bad, spoiled,
bad, spoiled as opposed to, oh, delicious ferment. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. One is that you just front load. You put enough of the bacteria or fungus, depending on what you're making, into this thing that you want, that it basically takes over and it kind of out punches everything else. The other option is that you adjust the pH or usually the salinity to make it so that there's just a very narrow window where the things that you don't want don't exist. Like they just can't live there. So 2% salt by mass generally tends to be the go-to for doing any sort of wild fermentation type of thing, in as much as that you just don't, it's just lots of things don't live in salt.
Yeah.
Stuff inside of us lives in salt, but the stuff that lives on vegetables doesn't live on salt. Vegetables aren't salty.
Yeah, also, you learn to recognize when a ferment has gone bad. Like the lemons that we showed earlier, like those, if they've got blue mold growing on them, they're fucked. Like there's certain, like you learn to know what you're fermenting. If you're making a lacto ferment and it's got mold growing on it, that's no bueno. Or like if you're making koji or if you're making sourdough, like generally mold is bad. But a lot of the other ferments, or if you're brewing and it smells bad, and like there's a difference between like this smells like delicious ferment and this smells bad, and like you learn that very quickly. We actually have
like a whole bunch of biological mechanisms for we just smell stuff and we're like, barf,
no good.
Now this gets weird. This gets difficult when you're dealing with stuff that you haven't dealt with before. So like
garum.
Westerners who have never been exposed to fish sauce are like super weirded out. They're like, what the heck?
Yeah, that one's probably the hardest when it comes to being able to smell when something's wrong, but also it's the most resilient. That one's a hard one to fuck up. Like given enough time, it just becomes safe. So that's the other thing. You got to get it at the right time. Making garum takes like 6 months. If you try and have it at like 2 weeks, you're not going to feel very good. But at 6 months, all of a sudden, all of the bad stuff has been broken down, and you're back into safe territory again.
Yeah, ferments are. I actually really enjoy making ferments because it's something that's taught me a lot of patience. Because I have always been a consummate fiddler. Like, I'm always fucking with stuff. And, like, ferments are totally a put something down and let it sit type of thing. And so I've learned a tremendous amount of patience from making ferments. In the same way that if you've ever watched somebody who fucks with a hamburger patty on a grill repeatedly until they just destroy it, as opposed to just flipping it once and it being cool.
Yeah.
It's the same type of concept.
Or like they're constantly stirring when they're cooking, when it's like, just stop touching
mixing and mixing, just don't touch it.
It's like you're making sauteed mushrooms, by the end of it you've made cream of mushroom. And it's like, just leave it alone. So somebody was asking what is bee pollen, so I had some pictures pulled up before, and then this is the garum that it ends up making. This is bee pollen garum.
Yeah, okay, have you never seen a bumblebee?
Yeah, I mean, it's bee pollen is exactly what it sounds like. It's the pollen left. So when they harvest, like a honeycomb, a lot of the time you'll end up with like piles of bee pollen throughout, and so you can clean it and like get all the bits of like shmoo out of it. But then yeah, you've got bee pollen, and some people will like eat it for reasons. Some people cook with it. Apparently, it tastes pretty good. To me, again, my allergies hurt just looking at this picture.
Yeah, some people use it medicinally.
But, I mean, it's also full of protein and enzymes, and so that's why you can turn it into garum. And I like it for that. I like the idea of turning it into garum because I just think it would give a really interesting flavor profile. And it's not fish, and it's nothing that was, like, alive, really. I mean, it's pollen, but, like, nobody cares about pollen. So it's like you could get like a fish sauce type thing, but like for a vegan, which is interesting. I mean, some vegans complain about bees, but fuck them.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't care. I don't like. I draw the line at complaining about bees. Bees are wonderful.
Soil is made from animal poop and dead animal bodies. Let's try to just recognize how life works.
Yep. But yeah,
take some biology classes.
Seriously, but the idea of vegan garum, I just find very interesting. That's really the only reason I like this, because I like being able to cook for all of my different friends, and I have some friends who have specific dietary choices, not requirements. It's a fucking choice, but you know, I like to be able to cook for everybody, because there's nothing worse than coming to a dinner party and not being able to eat. So you know. I just think it's a neat idea. There's really nothing more to it than that. I just think it's neat.
Cool. So, man, we've just been rambling forever. What do you think? Let's start hitting some comments and wrap it up.
Yeah, sure. While we're I've got one more ferment to show off that I realize I haven't actually shown off yet. But while I'm doing that, if you have any comments or questions or any of that, leave it in the comments, and we'll try and address it before we wrap up the show for the day. So while I'm waiting for comments to come in, this is the last ferment.
Okay, so this person has asked this question like multiple times, and we just keep getting sidetracked. Okay, adding rice flour to oat sourdough starter.
What? Adding? Where do you see that? Adding. Thoughts on adding rice flour to oats. Oh yeah, I see it. I mean.
So.
I mean, the thing is, sourdough isn't yeast. I mean, it is a little bit yeast, but it's also a ton of other microorganisms. So, it's a different thing. Like you wouldn't want to try and make wine with a sourdough starter. It would be gross.
Yeah. I don't necessarily. Okay, challenge accepted.
Oh God, what have I done? Okay, it wouldn't necessarily be gross, but it wouldn't be the same as a cider made with pure yeast.
Okay, mister, I made cheese from my face yeast or whatever the fuck you did last time.
It was sourdough. Hey,
okay,
I went the other way. I didn't like cover my face in sourdough and went look, I made a nicer face. You can't improve on this.
Right. You just said you would make alcohol out of sourdough starter.
I definitely wouldn't make alcohol out of the sourdough I made with my face.
Cool. I wasn't even thinking about the face yeast, but now I'm going to do that too.
Ew.
So anyway,
I
think that the rice flour is not actually going to help.
Yeah,
in the way that you want it. It's not going to hurt. It's just going to be like fluff.
Yeah,
it's going to absorb more liquid,
it'll
but
probably
it's not
break down. But
yeah,
not as
Interesting
much.
texture.
Yeah, it would probably add some fiber. Yeah, so if you guys have other questions, let us know in the comments. This is the last ferment that I just want to show off really quick. This is my homemade sauerkraut. So speaking of ferments that are made with skin microbes, sauerkraut is made by taking cabbage and crushing and like slicing it really thin, or not even that thin, but then kind of like working it and almost crushing it a little bit with your hands and like getting your microbes up in the cabbage and also salting it. So it's salted, but it's also full of you microbes.
Ooh, did you make kvass?
I did not. I have not made kvass. This is just kraut made with purple cabbage. I should make some kvass though. I know my Polish friend would love it. But yeah, so that's sauerkraut is also one of my favorites. It's great on meat. It's great on, I mean, it's great with some pierogies, like some pierogies and some like fried sauerkraut and some like caramelized onions. It's just delish. Also, if you've never made pierogies by hand before, you should definitely do it because it's not hard and it's real tasty. So yeah, that's the last ferment that I have to show off. Sauerkraut is also very easy to do. It's a fun little afternoon activity, and it is so much better usually than the stuff that you can buy in the store. Like, it's worth it. It takes no effort, or not no. It takes almost no effort. It's easy to do, and it's kind of like baby's first ferment. It's great.
You know that like the original. Like one of the original sauerkraut recipes was basically like shred up cabbage, rub it in a bunch of salt, cram it into a jar, seal the jar with clay, and then bury it underground for a year.
That sounds dope.
Right?
I'm sure it tastes pretty good too.
Shit, I gotta get myself a list here. Okay, so I'm
God.
making skin wine.
Oh god, that's gonna be so gross.
Whatever, you're gonna make a video about it. You'll be happy.
Yeah, probably.
And traditional kraut.
Somebody says don't make sauerkraut from red kraut. Why? It's delicious.
Why not?
The fuck? It's delicious. I think it does technically have a different name though. It's not sauerkraut. It's like, I don't know. I don't remember what it's called. I don't care. It's fucking sauerkraut. It's cabbage in a jar with salt.
Is cabbage and salt?
It's cabbage and salt. Fuck off. It's the same thing. But yeah. Also, you can do other things in with your kraut. Like, you can throw some, like, onion in there. You can throw some garlic in there. You can throw some carrot in there. All great options. And it'll all ferment. It'll all work down, and it becomes delicious. Speaking of sauerkraut, there's the Asian version of sauerkraut is kimchi, which, if you've never had kimchi, what are you doing with your life? It is delicious. The difference between sauerkraut and kimchi is that kimchi is also made with cabbage, but it's spicy, and it's also got usually they'll actually use fish sauce or anchovies in with the ferment. So you'll get usually some scallions, you'll get some Napa cabbage. So it's a different kind of cabbage, and it's usually cut differently. With kraut, you're going for like thin shreds, whereas kimchi tends to be squares, like it's like big chunks of cabbage. And it's
not even that. If you're doing it proper, you got the whole.
Yeah, you just take the whole cabbage and put it in a jar.
You cut it lengthwise. You don't split it, and then you pack it with the salt.
And then put it in a jar and just let it go. And it's really good. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's also very easy to make and very, very delicious. If I buy it, like whenever I remember to buy kimchi, like I go through a whole thing of it in like 2 weeks. It's delicious. It makes all other food delicious. And I think if there's one takeaway from this whole tirade, ferments make food better.
Tirade? Yeah, they do. They bust out the amount of like you've got your different types of taste. And ferments make things umami. Yep. They make things sour. They make things bitter.
They can make things
add
sweet.
Salt to them. They make things sweet. All of the different things that you love in your face come from fermentation.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you can make
Bread is a ferment.
Bread is a ferment. Wine is a ferment. Cheese is a ferment. We didn't even talk about...
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about your weird Mongolian nightmare cheese, but we didn't even talk about, like, blue cheese or normal fucking
Still
cheese.
there,
All the
Justin.
best cheeses
Sweaty
are fermented. Like,
garage.
ew, God. Not Swiss cheese. So, like, Swiss cheese, for example... The holes in Swiss cheese come from an organism that they add to the cheese as it's doing its thing, and the bubbles.
Actually, not anymore.
What?
No, it used to be because there was because it was because of an organism, because there were fragments of hay, and the organism was on the hay.
Yeah, but now they just add it to them. They just like inoculate.
Yeah,
it with
it's kind of like artificial, but it used to be because of contamination.
Yeah, and then
like
they just got used to it.
Yeah, the thing that we consider to be Swiss cheese with all the little holes was because of pieces of hay that were in the milk that they were using to make the cheese, because they...
It was hundreds of years ago, and QC wasn't a thing. Like...
And I don't know if QC is a thing right now anymore either, so
yeah,
there's that.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. But I mean, so many of the best cheeses are fermented. I mean, like, blue cheese is, I mean, the most obvious of this, because you can see it. But, like, the thing that makes blue cheese blue is, actually, I want to see if I can find a picture where you can actually see the spike. I think, yeah, you can see it. So... This picture is really interesting. So if you look at this cheese, the whole thing is blue, and this actually uses a strain of penicillium mold. So the same type of mold used to make penicillin, or not the same type, but a similar mold in the same family as the penicillin mold. What they do is they make the cheese normally, and so that's a whole set of organisms on its own. But then once the cheese is made and ready, they literally dip like a metal spike in the spores of the penicillium mold, and then they just like jam it into the
stabs.
cheese. Yeah, they make stabs.
They make stabs.
But of cheese.
Yeah, the same
cheese
way
stabs.
that we preserve bacteria.
Yeah, just,
Except cheese. Cheese stabs.
Cheese stabs. That's name of my new punk band?
Cheese stab. And yeah, fermentation and other things. Chocolate. Thank you for the comment. I lost your name because too many people are talking.
That is such a great point.
I mean, if you're going to talk about wine and cheese and bread, why aren't you talking about chocolate?
This is true. I mean, literally all the best. I mean, so far we have covered all of the best things, and they're all fermented. It's funny. The first time I learned that chocolate was fermented, it blew my frickin' mind. Like, not only is it fermented, so like raw cocoa bean is disgusting. Like, nobody who eats raw cocoa bean is like, this is great, I need more of this. No, it never happens. Like, cocoa beans are fucking gross. But, they're fermented in like a 3 or 4, it's a hard ferment too. It takes artistry to do this properly. And so it's like a 4-stage ferment where it's progressively fermented further, and then it's roasted, and then it can be turned into chocolate. It's a whole thing. It's like a lot of work to make chocolate, to go from disgusting-ass beans to delicious, delicious chocolate. But yeah, chocolate, also a fermented product. I mean, like, we haven't even covered some of the, like, the really weird ones. Like, we haven't covered natto. We haven't covered... I mean, we talked about gochujang briefly, but we didn't really talk about how it was made. Like,
did I tell you that somebody came and visited and brought me a natto sample?
You did not.
Lyophilized natto. I have stabs for you now.
You did natto. I regret nothing.
I regret so much right now.
I mean, I'll take some natto. That sounds dope. I mean, natto is a little weird.
I'll send it with the next shipment.
Okay, cool. But yeah, natto's a fun one. It's weird looking, and it takes some getting used to because it's an awful texture. But also a fermented product. We didn't talk about tempeh. Tempeh is very interesting. So tempeh is... how can we not talk about tempeh? Tempeh is beans.
Because there's too many things. Because everything is fermented.
All good things are fermented. It's true.
Yeah.
So tempeh is what happens when you take beans usually soybeans, but you can make this out of lentils, you can make this out of chickpeas, you can make it out of basically any legume. You can make it out of peanuts, but nobody wants that. But so it's basically fermented using a type of fungus, not like a mold, but like a proper fungus. Not to say mold isn't fungus, but like it's more fungusy than mold is. Anyway,
what is it? It's like a rhizopus, right?
yeah, rhizopus. I think
Rhizopus.
yeah, tempeh fungus, tempeh fungus. But either way, I mean, tempeh is also good. Tempeh can get a little funky for my taste personally, but I mean, cooked properly, like a good sear on some tempeh, and it's pretty good. You also like if you just drench it in some fish sauce, some soy sauce, both fermented products, and some gochujang, also fermented product, it gets real good, like really, really, really good. And I mean, every single one of those is a fermented product, and by the end of it, you end up with something delicious. Like, it's basically just stacking the ferments, and it gets constantly better. I just realized I totally missed a. Oh, actually, it was only a minute ago. So Mr. Mike donated. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. It says, constantly having my mind blown. Thank you for all your content and passion for science, guys. Question: how far out of the gene wheelhouse is synthesizing peptides? I really want to make SS31, but it's pretty expensive. Depends on the peptide, but also that I assume I'm going to take a wild swing in the dark here and assume that peptide is some anti-aging, must-be-injected fuckery. At which point...
Mitochondrial dysfunction.
Okay. In short, probably
now I'm just Googling because I don't know that shit off the top of my head.
Yeah. Making peptides can be technically easy. Like, physically making them is not hard. Making them to be human consumable is very hard. That's the long and short of it. That's why it's expensive. Purification is expensive. Also, I just realized, since we're talking about ferments, there's some ferments that we totally missed, which I'm glad I have Benchling open, because some of the...
It's only 4K.
4K for what?
No, I mean, like, 4 kilo... Sorry, that was just...
I mean, 4K is chunky. 4K is not a peptide anymore. That's a protein. So some of the things that we made on previous streams are these two plasmids. So in the very first stream that we did, I designed two plasmids. This one, called Hokan MX Egg, and Hokan MX Deer Milk. Deer Milk! Which I assume Gabe is going to turn into weird...
and I can turn it into Mongolian
cheese brick. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you are.
I'm gonna totally make genetically modified deer Mongolian cheese. That sounds awesome.
I love everything about that sentence. These are two pieces of DNA which we designed on earlier streams that are meant to work in yeast. So you can ferment with them as if it was just beer, but the liquid, rather than ending up as wine, would slowly be turned into, in this case, egg white, and in this case, deer milk. So the reason I went with deer milk and not cow milk is because cow milk has been patented by bastards, and I hate patents, so I've made deer milk, which is unpatentable. And so this has been copylefted and will be available for whoever wants it. And the idea is you put this into yeast, and then the yeast will just crank out all the proteins that are normally found in milk. And because they're deer, it's not patented, which means anyone can use it and I can share. And those are going to be really fun. They have been ordered, they've been paid for, and the synthesis company is making them. So in about, I reckon it's going to take them 2 or 3 months to actually finish the synthesis, because this is a big chunk of DNA. Like, they've got to make this whole thing. So from there to there, that's 4,000 base pairs. That's a chunky boy. So that's going to
be done in about a month.
Ish. We'll see.
A month-ish.
Ish. But so they're going to synthesize this. We've also sent them the other part of this, the backbone. They'll then cut the backbone open, stick the synthesized chunk in, and then send me literally piles of DNA. And then that DNA will be made available for whoever wants it, and we'll be able to make... and of course I'll do videos about this, like not just streams. Like I'm going to make like proper videos about this, where we're going to make some fucking deer milk and some egg white, and I'm going to make myself... I'm going to grow an omelet. It's going to be great. I'm going to grow an omelette du fromage. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, did I mention that? I think I told you, yeah. No, the lactose upgrade.
What?
That's also being built right now.
Oh, okay.
Since you're making deer milk.
Okay. So should we talk about this on the stream? Is that fine?
No, let's talk about it another time.
Okay,
It
we'll
doesn't
talk
have
about it
anything to
another
do with fermentation.
Okay, that's
Let's wrap it up here.
okay. So
Yeah.
let's just do a quick check. If there's any oh god, if there's any last questions, now is your time. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap it up for the day. We've already been going for 2 hours, so it's about that time. My voice box is on fire. How close is genetically is deer milk to goat milk? I have no idea. That's, I mean, we could check, but the reason I chose deer was two reasons. Thing number one is because it wasn't patented. Well, three reasons. Thing number one is because it was not patented. Thing number two is because deer had been sequenced. And three is that, like amino acid for amino acid, it is very similar to cow milk. So it is genetically different enough that the people who wrote the patent can kind of go fuck themselves with a rake. But it's similar enough that it should taste the same. Well, I mean, it's gonna be slightly alcoholic because it's made with yeast. So to be clear, we're making deer milk that you can grow in a vat that's slightly alcoholic, which is amazing. So I'm gonna then, concentrate the proteins down, make it into some slightly alcoholic cheese, and then make
It's not
myself
alcoholic cheese. It's just drunk.
and
Evidently, there's also reindeer cheese.
it's close enough to deer.
There's a Finnish cheese. It's reindeer cheese.
So we're gonna make we're gonna make some GMO deer cheese in the style of the Finnish.
Yeah, they can participate in those reindeer games.
That's gonna be fucking weird, and I'm into it. So that's a thing.
No, I did not get that beer. I will get it when he sees me.
Yeah, which we're waiting for the pandemic to end. So
Yes,
2 years
after Plague Event.
Yeah, after Plague Event, when I can go buy him a beer, I will buy him a beer.
Or maybe you could. No, dude, PayPal me like something, and then next time we do a live stream, I'll just drink a PBR.
There you go.
Instead of lemonade.
And be very sad, presumably. Because I know you're...
I don't know, it's technically water and alcohol, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, I've drank a PBR and I was sad the entire time.
You're a snob.
No, I just like my liquids to not taste like someone peed in my cup.
Well, then don't drink alcohol ever.
I don't.
All right.
Okay, what else we got? Last questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up for the day. Does the patent make it illegal to own or use the cow milk gene? No. I think the patent only covers the use of the gene in the specific context of growing it using microbes and then making
I actually know more about this type of thing.
Yeah.
So this is what's considered a method patent. You can't patent a naturally occurring genome. You can patent how it's being applied to a plasmid and how it's being produced.
Yeah.
So like if you take the cow gene, if he was to take the cow gene and he was to put it into
yeast.
Let's go with Aspergillus.
Oh God. Oh god.
Uh,
Koji cheese.
what?
Oh god, it'd be
Koji
so
cheese.
weird. Oh, it'd be so weird.
Co-cheeses.
Oh Jesus.
Um, so if he was to do that, technically he's not violating the patent in as much as that he's not violating the method.
Yeah.
The materials that he's using are all mentioned in the patent, but they can't be controlled in the same way.
Yeah. Also, somebody asked about human milk. Human milk was also covered in that same patent. It was a whole list of animals. It was an asshole thing to do. Like, this is the reason I made this plasmid.
Yeah.
Like, so the way this plasmid came to be...
Not a fan.
Yeah, well, so the reason I even bothered making this plasmid was because that actually really pissed me off. Like, I looked up the patent because I thought it was an interesting concept, and then I saw that they were dickheads and tried to patent literally like 100 species. And I was like, all right, well, that's enough of that shit. And so I found the one on the list that they didn't cover, and now we've made our own, because fuck them. That's absolute bullshit. Like, I understand if you're going to cover, like, cow milk and goat milk, fine. But to, like, cover woolly mammoth, human, orangutan, fucking, like, hippo, like, that's bullshit. Like, that's just being a dick.
I mean, hippos are just, like, badasses. Nobody's going to go out there and milk a hippo.
Right? Who's going to milk a hippo? Who's going to milk a mammoth? Last I checked, they're fucking extinct. So, like, it's just, that was some bullshit. Like, that's why I did this. It's because I'm like, there's one thing, like, I understand the point of patents. I think it's bullshit and basically just, like, for the 1% to continue to, like, press their boot onto everyone's neck. But, so I don't like patents. But I understand the point. However, if you're going to be a dick in your patent, I'm going to fuck with you. That's just how it is. Like, I can't not. Like, so anyways, moving on. What else we got? So I think I saw another question go by. Oh yeah, so somebody asked, is the police going to bust your house down for making cow milk, or is it only after they sue? It's if they sue. Patents are so that they can sue.
Unless you're in Austria.
Unless you're in Austria. In which case, then
or
yes.
Germany, or most of the EU.
Yeah, if you're in the EU, they will, because GMOs are super illegal for no good reason.
Yeah. In the United States, I'm allowed to do whatever the heck I want.
Yeah.
Even die from corona.
You're not allowed to do that. They insist.
I know, right? Okay, whoa, we're getting too real here.
Yeah,
Let's bring it back around.
Okay, so what ferment would you recommend for a total noob starting to ferment?
Wine.
Wine, yeah, wine is good.
You're gonna make wine. You're gonna take a bunch of fruit. You're gonna blend it up. You're gonna add a little bit more sugar.
And some
you're
more,
gonna do
a little
pinch,
more water. Pinch
a
of
little
salt.
more water so that it looks like liquid.
Yeah.
You're gonna throw
Strain
a pinch of yeast. No. First round you don't. You let it all sink.
Okay, that's fine.
You're going to throw a pinch of yeast in there, and you're going to put it in a bottle with an airlock.
There's actually a video on my channel on how to make wine and mead. So if you've never done this before, there is a great tutorial readily available. There's also approximately 10 bazillion more on YouTube. So making wine is the easiest thing to start with, and everybody likes alcohol. So it is a great thing to start with, unless you're not 18 or 21 if you live in the fucking crazy nutcases that are south of my border. Where you're allowed to die for your country, but you can't have a drink. But anyways, so if you're not of age, then I would suggest making something with koji, because koji is also very easy and also delicious.
Have you considered making bread?
Bread.
I mean,
also bread. Bread is a fantastic starter.
It's pandemic. It's pandemic, and everyone is nuts about sourdough.
Yeah.
Make some fucking sourdough.
Make some sourdough. I also have a video about that. Look up. There's no such thing as a yeast shortage on my second channel, The Taste Emporium, which you should go subscribe to.
Very true. It's in the air. You're huffing yeast right now.
Yeah, it's in the air. It's already in the flour. You don't need to add shit. You just mix flour and water, and it'll just happen. There's already yeast in there. They just do the thing. So yeah, that is really the easiest. Then from there, you get into your like lacto ferments and your kraut. Kraut is also a great starting one because that's just cabbage and salt. Most ferments are not hard. It's not rocket science. It's just fucking artisanally rotting things. Like,
You gotta stop using that word.
I refuse.
It has a negative connotation.
Good. Let it. Let them learn that rotting is good. Because if, like, past ferments, you get into compost, and we like compost. So,
yeah.
I'm not gonna.
So,
I'm not gonna,
if you're wondering what defines non-commercial use, just to like go off on a tangent here, Lord, I don't know how to pronounce this.
Spickerput.
Spickerput.
It's
Or
just
Spickerput.
It's too many counts.
Spiky poot.
Spiky poot. Okay. Spiky poot.
That's kind of my job.
Yeah.
My job is to circumvent legality, not to actually break the law, but to just find out where things work differently. So if you are interested in that type of thing, I suggest that you reach out to me. I think Justin put some stuff in the bottom where you can contact me.
Everything other than his TikTok is in the description.
Put my TikTok in there. It's cute.
I refuse.
Do it.
That app is a safety hazard.
You're a safety hazard.
I'm not going to disagree, but one of them sends information to the Chinese government and one of them doesn't.
All of them send information to all the governments. This is stupid.
Anyway.
Okay, moving on. Please reach out to me. I prefer Instagram in as much as that I will just tell you to email me from there.
Yeah.
So I will tell you more if you DM me. So that's actually the end of me for today. If
we're gonna wrap it up.
If anyone wants to contact me or find out more about what I know, you can DM me.
Yep.
Send an I will. Yep, and then I will send you an email. You can send me an email.
Yep. info@scihouse.space is how you contact Gabriel. But yeah, so thanks everybody for hanging out. This has been a lot of fun. As you can tell, we all love ferments. Ferments are wonderful. They're what makes life worth living and food worth eating. So if you enjoyed, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit that like button if you haven't already. There'll be a new video coming out on the main channel in 3 or 4 days. Definitely keep an eye out for that. I think it's gonna be. I am eating the product of that video right now. This is my GMO bread. Be excited. I fucking am. Other than that, there's links in the description. Thank you everybody who's donated. It is really truly greatly appreciated, and it's going a long way to hopefully getting me new editing computers so that I can stop wanting to rip my hair out while I'm editing. Thanks again.
That's never gonna happen.
Let me dream, man. I can dream. Thanks again to Gabe for hanging out. There should be a new stream on Tuesday, and we may do another Biohack Chat with Gabe next Friday or Saturday-ish, or I might have one of my other fun bio friends on, or one of my other science friends. We will see. So other than that, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Stay safe. Wear a goddamn mask. And I'll see you next time. Bye.